9 o'clock, we'll call this meeting to order. It's the Metropolitan Planning Organization Board, Friday, November 22nd, 2024. Would you please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Since we got some new members here this morning, we're going to do roll call a little bit differently. We'll go around the room and introduce ourselves. I'll start. John R. King, council member for Myers Beach, currently vice chair but acting chair today. Laura?
Laura Carr, City of Bonita Springs, representing District 3.
David Malika, District 3.
Cecil Paragraph, Lake County Commission, District 2.
Teresa Watkins Brown, City of Fort Myers, Ward 1.
Go ahead, Wayne.
Department of Transportation, sitting in for L.K. Nanda, District Secretary.
Lori Lehman, Cape Coral, District 2.
Joe Kilrain, Cape Coral, District 5.
Mike Miller, City of Sanibel, Vice Mayor.
Joanne Ribble, Village of Estero, District 1.
Thank you very much, everybody. Welcome to our new members. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I always ignore them
District
anyway.
1. No problem. No section.
It's still looking good.
So much for running the meeting smoothly so far. Public comments on the consent agenda items. Any public comment? Sure.
Actually,
You're on number 4.
your item's not up yet. Hold on.
Are you Amy? Yeah, we'll get you. We have the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion. Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Now we'll take public comments on each public hearing and new business item. So we have the approve amendments to fiscal year 2025, 2026 to fiscal year 2028/2029 Transportation Improvement Program. Don?
So this is adding 3 new projects to the current TIP. Transit Administration 5310 grant awards. One for Lee-Tran for capital funds. That's for buses and equipment. And then one for Sally J. Pimentel Deaf and Hard and Hearing Center for operating funds and also for capital funds as well. In addition, as part of this, we're also adding a phase for railroad and utilities for the Coconut Road Sidewalk project from Oak Wild to via Coconut Point Road. Any questions? And I think we do have one public speaker.
Any questions, Mike?
Yeah, I had a question, just out of curiosity. This 4th project is for a sidewalk. When we use the term sidewalk, does that include a bicycle share use path, or is it limited sidewalk?
That's limited to a sidewalk in that location.
Okay.
Any other board questions?
Mr. Chair, so acquiring funds for BERT seems like ambiguous. Are we getting funds for BERT too? Or am I on 12? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it should be on
Okay, sorry.
Any other board questions? Amy Turner, you have public comments. You're the executive director of Sally J. Pimentel Deaf and Hard of Hearing Center. So go ahead and thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? My name is Amy Turner, and I am the Executive Director of the Sally J. Pimentel Deaf and Hard of Hearing Center. I just wanted to come here today to thank you, but before I talk to you about that, I wanted to let you know that back in the 70s, when I was a young child, I remember when there were no dips in the crosswalks for wheelchairs. And today, if that happened with somebody with a wheelchair, and we saw that happening, we would think to ourselves, hey, how come there's not a dip in that crosswalk over there? And we would help our fellow American citizen, and we would be able to see the disability. With deafness, it's invisible, and you can't see it happening. So I wanted to let you know that if you've ever tried to teach a 16-year-old how to drive that's deaf, it's very difficult. Think about trying to perform that act, and they can't hear you. This is something that we do at our agency completely in sign language. But also think about being at your doctor's appointment, getting a cancer diagnosis, but you can't hear your doctor. We provide those services as well with interpreting. Today, you're going to do something that's extremely important. Everything is important on this agenda today, but I do want you to know that what you're about to do is incredibly important to the deaf community, the deaf-blind community, and late deafened community and hard of hearing people. You're about to make a huge difference. Before I worked here at the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Center, I was over at the Lighthouse for the Blind for about 3.5 years, and they had FDOT vehicles, and they were a game changer for that agency, being able to go and pick up blind people and give them services. You're about to make that decision today, and I wanted to stand before each and every one of you and tell you thank you in advance. This has been a 2-year-long grant journey, and I wanted to tell each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the entire deaf community, thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for what you do for the community as well. Do we have a motion on the amendment?
I move approval of the amendments to the 24-29 TIP.
Second.
This requires a roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Moving on to new business, adoption of resolution supporting 2025 safety targets. Ron?
Yes. So this is something that we do, every year. These are the federal safety targets, which are always has been 0. But AppDOT basically they set the targets for the new year, and then the MPOs have to follow. They are given 180 days. So AppDOT actually set their targets on August 31st of this year, and what we have usually done is that instead of setting our own targets, we support the FDOT targets. So the action item is basically adopt that task resolution supporting the statewide safety targets for calendar year 2025. But before you take any action, I just want to proceed to a few slides that are coming up. So this basically shows how we are faring over the years. So there are 2 lines out here, the line graph. One basically showing what are the actual numbers annually. So we are talking about the fatalities. I also want to go back for the sake of the new members that these are the matrices or performance measures. There are 5 of them. And that's how we check how we have fared for Lee County. So the 2 lines out here, the first line out here in green basically shows your number of fatalities each year up to 2023. The 2024 has not ended yet. And the purple line basically shows your 5-year rolling averages. For example, if you're looking at the 5-year rolling average for 2023 is 116.4, which is basically you add the actual fatality numbers for 2023 and the 3 preceding years, all the way up to 2019, then divided by 5, and whatever number you get, that is the 5-year rolling average for 2023. So basically, when you look at the purple line, it is going up, but then when you look at the actual numbers, number of fatalities, it has come down from 2022. Then this is the number of serious injuries. Again, the numbers have dropped. When you look at them by specific years, dropped from 2021 to all the way down to 2023. But then when you look at the 5-year rolling average, it kind of goes up a little bit. And then you have the rate of fatalities, the same, the actual numbers, the rate of fatalities have dropped from 2022 to 23. And then this is the rate of serious injuries. Again, it has dropped when you look at the 2021 numbers, it has dropped, but then when you look at the 5-year rolling averages, it's still a deep going down, which is good. And then finally, you have the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So again, basically shows the comparison of the two line graphs. So that's what I have, and then let me take you back to the first slide. And there's your action item. That's what we're looking for.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do. Is that built on a municipality basis? That's how you build that? Each municipality and/or corporation would then identify what their statistics are, and it's rolled into that?
This is all Lee County, but we do have numbers, like we have done some deep dive analysis, but that's part of another project that we're doing that actually shows the numbers for each municipality and unincorporated Lee County. But we don't have that here broken down by local government.
Is there any calibration in there for population change?
Not
that it's relevant, but it would be interesting to see it.
There is a kind of relationship to the vehicle miles travel when you have increase in vehicle miles travel, and it's happening every year. Population growth is increasing, so is especially the vehicle miles travel. And when you have too many people driving cars, then you end up with a lot of crashes.
Thank you.
Any other board questions? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Chair will entertain a motion on this adoption of the resolution.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Resolution's adopted. Adoption of resolution updating PM2 and PM3 targets. Ron?
Okay, so PM2 targets, these are set to improve the interstate bridges and non-interstate national highway system. And I'll get to the next slide to show what those national highway system roadways are. Then PM3 targets, on the other hand, they are set to basically improve the interstate and non-interstate national highway system roadways. So here is your national highway system roadway map for Lee County. So pretty much, when you look at the state highways, probably like 90% of them belong to the national highway system. Other than the state highways, you have, county roads like the Veterans Parkway in Cape Coral, and then Del Prado, which are also part of the national highway system. So, like I explained with the safety targets, APDOT takes the lead in setting targets, and then the MPO has to follow suit, and they have the option to either support the FDOT, the targets, or we set our own targets. And what we have done in the past, as always, instead of setting our own targets, we have supported the FDOT targets. So as far as the PM2 and PM3 targets are concerned, we actually brought the targets last year in January, basically to get a resolution adopted to support the FDOT targets, but FDOT has recently updated those targets. So what you see is a performance period. So when we are talking about the PM2 targets, which basically focuses on the pavement and the bridge, we have a performance period starting from January 1, 2022 to December 31, 2025. So what that means is that you have to set targets, the 2-year targets and like the 4-year targets. The 2-year targets are basically 2023 and the 4-year targets are 2025. So 2023 is already over and dusted with. So when I said, APDOT basically went and updated the targets for 2025. So basically, these are all your performance measures or matrices. So in here, they're talking about percent of national highway system bridges in poor condition. So basically, APDOT changed those targets. They're saying that those kind of bridges in poor condition cannot be any greater than 5%, right? So that's the only change when it comes to the PM2 targets. And then the PM3 targets, which basically focuses on the system performance of the entire interstate and all the national highway system roadways. So APDOT also went and made changes to the 2025 targets. So basically what we are looking at in these two are what we call the travel time reliability index. And these are, again, the performance measures. So they changed those numbers and APDOT basically for 2025. For the first one out here, they changed it to, it cannot be greater or equal to 75%. Previously, it used to be 70%, right in here. And then for this performance measure also, like they have changed that to greater or equal to 60%. So these are the two changes for the PM3 targets. And so basically, we're asking you to adopt a resolution that you have in your package to support the state's updated PM2 and PM3 targets.
Thank you. Any board questions for Ron? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passes. Review and approve the long-range plan, public improvement plan, and goals and objectives. Don?
So we're in the process of updating the long-range plan. For the newer members, we do that every 5 years. It's due December 12th or 18th, I can't remember the exact date, of 2025. So as part of this process, we have different things that we'll bring over the next year to you. The first item in here is the 2050 Transportation Plan, Public Improvement Plan. We've already got some names that have been emailed to us to add to the mailing list, and obviously we need to update as new MPO boards have been added as well for adding the contact list and stuff like that. But anyway, this is the public involvement that we'll target as part of it. I've been out speaking to some of the neighborhood groups already about the project. And then the second part of this is our goals and objectives. We have certain goals and objectives that have to follow federal requirements. Hasn't changed much since the last one. We're under the same transportation bill. But I did make a small change at the bottom of it to change it to emerging transportation technologies. Because there's other things out there like electric vertical and takeoff and landing vehicles. There's things, delivery by packages by drone, things like that. So try to cover the whole thing and any of the intelligent transportation system items as well. Open it up for any questions anybody has.
Any board questions?
I do. Well, one, there's no mention of adding lights to the streets. And I've been down some dark roads, and bicyclists on electric bikes are riding by, and it's kind of frightening because you don't see them. They're dressed all in black. They're going to work, most likely in a service industry, and you just don't see them. And there were no lights at all. The folks in the neighborhood didn't have lights. I actually turned around and left. It was just too stressful to drive where I couldn't see where I was going, and then black dots were coming out and going by. So is there any plan to put up lights?
So the general, we don't put like everything you're doing as part of it, but number 2 here, increase the safety and transportation system for motorized and non-motorized users. That really takes that part of it. Obviously, one of the things you'll be interested in that's coming up soon is our safety action plan, which there's a flyer in the back about our public meeting come out. But probably around March, we'll be presenting that to the board. And that has specific improvements in specific areas. And lighting is definitely one of the things that public comments brings up.
Great, thank you very much.
Any other questions from the board? Any public comment on this item? Being none, the chair will entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Presentation on the Pine Island Trail Project feasibility study and discussion on the viability of the funding future project phases.
So I think Wayne's going to introduce this item, and then we have some comments at the end of it too as well. We've had a lot of discussion lately about projects and project cost and can we move forward.
Good morning, Wayne Gaither, Florida Department of Transportation. I would like to introduce Anthony Gastelone. He is a consultant working for the district, preparing the feasibility study for a trail system located along State Route 78, Pine Island Road. And with that, I will let Anthony go straight into the presentation. Good morning. Been working on this project since 2020, actually. December of 2020, we kicked off the project, and the limits of the project on the western side of Pine Island at Stringfellow Road, and almost 6 miles through the preserve area, through Matlacha, and connecting to the intersection at Burnt Store Road and Veterans Parkway. You see the color codes there as the project advisory group and the team proceeded with the project. It was decided to split the project into 3 separate segments because there's different characteristics within each of those segments. There's different speed limits, and there's different needs within each of those segments. So this is just a brief snapshot of the project. Again, in 2021, as we queried, we did a project questionnaire that we put out to the public. And during the discussions with the team and the results of the questionnaire, it was determined from DOT standpoint that through Matlacha, we really needed to look not just at a shared use path, but a complete street concept. And we'll get to that in a second. And then, of course, the end of September, Hurricane Ian came through and pretty much put a hold on the project till we could establish what existing conditions were, post-hurricane conditions were on the ground, and how it would impact the project. This past May, we held our first public workshop on the project, presenting various alternatives through each of those segments that I presented previously. And as of this week, we're finalizing that draft feasibility study. We submitted a draft in August to the department, received comments, and we're finalizing that this month. So the reason for the project, originally going back now a handful of years, is there was a missing link connection of a path or a pedestrian bicyclist path between the mainland Cape Coral and the barrier island of Pine Island. And so the original purpose was to make that connection, that 5-6 mile connection. Of course, we evaluated over the past few years, what are the community needs, what are the safety needs, and I mentioned that eventually it was determined that through Matlacha, we needed more than just a shared path or a connection. We needed a complete street solution. And of course, as a result of Ian, we also had to start taking a look at resiliency. So those ended up being the primary purpose and needs. The safe system approach to our project, and we'll hear about safety throughout this presentation. That's probably the primary need here, particularly through Matt Lachey, and as we were looking at the various segment alternatives. I mentioned that early on in the project, we did a questionnaire, was open to the public. We had over 900 responses, which was a really good sample size for a questionnaire. Of those responses, 90% of those responses were from residents, business owners, and folks within that study area I described, Stringfellow to veterans. So we knew that 90% of the responses came from that specific group of folks. And overwhelmingly, and this hasn't changed from 3 years ago to today, there is a need to enhance pedestrian and bicyclist safety along that 6-mile corridor. So I mentioned the project advisory group. On the right there, you could see some of the meetings that started back in April of 21 and continued right up prior. And as I mentioned, again, safety was the top concern for all users of Pine Island Road. Parking availability certainly floated up as a key issue, as well as right-of-way concerns. And we could talk about that in a bit too. So in May, we're going to flip ahead to this year, 2024. In May, we did have our first public meeting, and that was held on Pine Island. We had actually a hybrid meeting as well. Almost 90 folks attended the public meeting in person, and then another 29 joined a couple of days later for a hybrid presentation of what was shown at the public meeting. And we received 88 comments during the following 10-day comment period. So overall, what was the general consensus of those comments? And you could see there was a word salad board here that we had, and we had folks writing their opinions. And we digested all of the feedback. Safety, again, became one of the top concerns from the feedback we received. But those segments, again, the 3 segments, the one to the west going through the preserve area, really no opposition to having a shared use path. Segment 2, there was some opposition to a shared use path. And in fact, you'll see in a later graphic where the team decided there was concern with the right-of-way. Business owners had concerns of a path right up in front of their doorways, for example. And of course, safety, even though there was some opposition, there was a lot of comments that said, hey, we don't want a path. However, we want you to do something about the safety out there, the pedestrians and the bicyclists. So there was some opposition in segment 2. That was the one in the middle, the yellow one through Matt Lachey. And segment 3, essentially no opposition, where you would take the path and connect it to the existing path or on Birdstor Road. So this is, I don't expect you to see all the little fine print here, but this is a graphic of what the team came up with as we evaluated all the purpose and need of this project, from potential right-of-way impacts to its environmental impacts, the traffic operations, because we did look at safety as far as crashes and daily traffic out there. And we also looked at the cost for each of those different pieces through the segments. And we digested all of that. You see the top, the green check marks and the X's. The 2 X's in the orange there to the right are segments through Matt Lachey with the shared use path that was determined by our team if we were to move forward with the next piece, the PD&E document, that we would not be looking at a shared use path through Matt Lachey. However, we would consider sidewalks, and certainly parking would be a very important element through that segment. And as always, at the end, the no build is an option that would be looked at in any type of future studies, which would be a PD&E type study. This is a little more detailed snapshot of the schedule. As I mentioned, we began in December of 2020. We compiled that project advisory group of members from the MPO, business owners, residents, folks from Pine Island, Cape Coral, and Matlacha Community Association. And then we went through all these steps of identifying the needs, collected a lot of data. We developed feasible alternatives, and then we refined those alternatives over these past few months that led up to the workshop. And that was in May of 24, and we're just about completing the feasibility. Once it gets in the DOT's hands, the MPO will certainly have that in their hands as well, with all the supporting data. So the next step would be taking those alternatives that we developed and running them through a more a NEPA type detailed study for all the segments. We'd be looking at a no-build alternative and build alternatives through each of those three segments. The segment on the west and the segment on the east would only look at a shared use path. The segment in the middle would be more complete street type of a typical section and sidewalks only, and parking, parallel parking on either one or both sides of the street. So that's where the PD&E is pending, hasn't started yet, would be the next steps. This is just a snapshot of the funding of what's been programmed to date. And you can see there that the feasibility study is about complete, delivering it actually the end of this month, and the PD&E is pending. There's almost $1 million funded for that. And then design, fiscal year 26 that's preliminary engineering. So that's not final design, but that would be preliminary engineering, is funded as well. And those are SU funds, by the way. And of course, we always finish our presentation with a safety moment. And this is very pertinent to Pine Island, Matlacha, Cape Coral segments we just talked about. The top graphic, through Matlacha, for example, our goal for a complete street would have the speed limit at 20 to 25 miles an hour, so that all users, pedestrians, and bicyclists would share the road with the vehicles. But if you could see, as the probability of a serious injury or fatality at 20 miles an hour hit with a pedestrian is pretty low. But as you increase that to 40 miles an hour, you could see the probability goes to about 80% of a serious injury fatality. So that's our safety moment for the day. You might have seen this graphic before. We did grab this from USDOT, and it's a pretty popular. And with that, thank you. Open it up, Ron, for.
So one of the things I want to point out in this process, we've had some discussions lately with FDOT about project cost, what can go forward, what can't go forward. I'm not going to touch on all the issues we're talking about, but I did want to point out a few of them. If you didn't catch the parentheses, the bottom one, FDOT is no longer looking to do PD&E studies on off-system roads. So for this to continue, the county will have to do the project development and environment and also the design as part of the process. Now, this is a change in what they usually did. I don't know how many years ago they said, we're going to do all the project development environment studies, even if it's an off-system, off the state system roadway. But that's changed since then. So that is a consideration with moving these projects forward, obviously for your staffs to move them forward. The other things out there, each of the jurisdictions get some local agency program projects that are funded with federal funds. They are looking at kind of limiting those to probably be no more than 2 per year, based on delivery issues and things like that have been out there, and also cost increases where it's tougher to cover 4 or 5 project costs that have gone up. They want to update the project costs more regularly, address projects with no path forward due to a lack of funding, and that kind of points back to what we're talking about here. Yes, there is design out there, but there is no right-of-way money, there is no construction money, and we're having issues funding the projects moving forward as it is. The feasibility is nearing completion. Funding for design in the TIP, that's $3.5 million you called there. And as I said, there's no funding for construction. So I open it up for any comments anybody has. We will be talking about some other projects out there. I had a longer thing we talked about at the executive committee, like for instance, Old 41's project's gone up hugely for right-of-way cost. I'm not sure that has a path forward in its current alternative, I guess you would say. Maybe a piece of that alternative will go forward. Have some other discussions with projects, but today it was specifically about Pine Island from Stringfellow to Veterans.
I had one note on the cost there
Yes.
that I showed, and I know it wasn't, it was a detailed matrix. From day one in our study,
Come over here.
Oh, yeah. In that matrix that I had showed earlier, and the costs, there was zeros in all the right-of-way. So, yeah, if you want to put it up. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the matrix. Right there. Yeah. Yeah. So, right here, potential right-of-way impact, you see zeros all the way across the board. So it was decided early on that there would be zero right-of-way impacts for this project. Everything done for the shared use path and or sidewalks, even complete street, would be done within existing right-of-way. So as far as right-of-way costs, and typically that could take a while to get right-of-way under control for a project. Now, there could be construction easements once this advanced to that point where you have easements, temporary right-of-way easements, but that's it. So just, that was a pretty important consideration for the consultant team, DOT, from day one, due to the concerns of a narrow right-of-way out there. It's generally 66 feet. And when we looked at our typical sections, we really looked at a section to give it a little leeway on each side. We looked at a 60-foot right-of-way to have our typical sections through, to just allow that 3 foot of fluff on either end. Because some of the buildings out there, frankly, are right up against the right-of-way, and we realize that. So I just wanted to point that out, because on this project, there would pretty much be zero right-of-way costs to obtain any type of property.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just on Mount Lachey, that has evolved through Eon and other things, the pathway through there. I see it as a tremendous challenge with that right-of-way, and there's been no upfront engineering feasibility on this yet. It was just based on your initial stamp of the 60 feet then. Because that's even probably a challenge there if you look at some of the issues with the building fronts.
Yeah, 60 feet is narrow, but when you reduced, by looking at a complete street section, we were looking at 10-foot travel lanes, okay, and an 8-foot parking, parallel parking on either side. And I don't have typical sections to show you, but actually 60 feet does give you a lot of leeway to be able to put narrower lanes, parking on either or both sides of the street, and sidewalks on either side, on both sides. The reason we would propose sidewalks on both sides, if you have parking on one side of the street, you need to get out of your car and onto a sidewalk. And unfortunately, the next phase of the project would really get into some concept design plans where you could look at something in 2 dimensions. So it's hard for folks to really look at a typical section and say, hey, there's just not enough room out there because, you know, my business is right here. There's no way you can put a shared use path. And like I mentioned, it was decided that we would not put any 8 or 10-foot path through Metropolitan. Pretty much just sidewalks on both sides of the street.
Yeah, many of the businesses on there have egress and exit points, you know. And
yeah.
Each of the businesses have. So.
Right. Right, and that's where you would need to really look at conceptual plans where you say, okay, I can put 3 or 4 parking spaces here, and then on the other side of the street, I can put them here. And actually, when you have parking on each side of the street, it helps to slow down traffic. Because you have people opening doors, getting out, parallel parking, and it kind of reduces the traffic calming effect. So it would look much different than it does today or pre-Ian, where you had a lot of vehicles pulling in at 90 degrees. And the rear of their pickups sticking out into the travelway in some instances.
Well,
So,
not to be facetious, they have pretty good capabilities slowing down traffic there already, so it's pretty rough getting through there. Thank you.
yep.
Any other questions? Laura?
Mr. Chair, so will the sidewalks be told this is for pedestrians only? Or will it be a shared, because that's how it's going to be?
No, the bicycle, it would be bike and vehicle sharing the roadway, so there would be chaperones. So your true bicyclists would be on the roadway with the vehicles. Traveling, and again, the target speed through Matlacha would be 20 to 25 miles an hour.
But how do you enforce the electric bikes and their speedway? Their speed?
Well, enforcing them, those electric bikes would not be on the sidewalk. And really, the law is today you don't ride your bike on a sidewalk.
In the state of Florida?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that's like, there's specific.
Can we get some signs? POC, please?
The state of Florida allows you to ride your e-bikes on shared use path, sidewalk, and everything. It is only, when it comes to local governments, they try to be more stringent. Matlacha is unincorporated Lee County. No ordinance has been, passed or anything like that. So, free for all.
Any questions from the board? Sure, David?
This is my first meeting, and so I know there's a lot of detail and things that I wasn't part of these prior meetings, but I did live in Matlacha for a long time, and my family's been on Pine Island for over 100 years, and I don't know how you're going to fit anything into the space we have that makes any sense. A 10-foot wide lane to add sidewalks to congest it more. The average tractor trailer heavy equipment moving item is an 8'6" deck. Most of them, I have 10-foot wide trailers, equipment haulers. A lot of equipment, heavy equipment is 9'6", 11 feet wide. When you're saying a 9 or a 10-foot wide travel lane for trucks, 2 of those trucks coming next to each other have 9 inches of clearance based on what you just said to add a sidewalk. I don't see where that's a success plan. People are concerned with getting off the island in a hurricane. They want more vehicle ingress and egress. If we clutter it up with more things in the way, I just don't see that's helping what anybody is actually trying to do that lives there. So I have my concerns with adding more obstacles to traffic. Especially the parallel parking, I think it sounds terrible. Doors opening while the tractor trailer comes by, it doesn't sound safe to me.
Mr. Pendercrest?
Okay, not really a question, more of a statement, I guess. There's a lot of history out there, and David, thank you for bringing that up, and you understand the dynamics of the problem is we have people using the current right-of-way now for parking and public use, and that's one of their strengths, and that's something, obviously, this was done 4 years ago. You saw there's a need for this, but the concern is also how to get vehicles off, and how do we address people using the current right-of-way, and how do you expand lanes, and how do you also, now you have knowledge of them using the right-of-way, and we're not utilizing it for either public safety for bicycle pedestrian, or we don't use it for lane expansion. So that's something we have to discuss in the future too. From the county side, we're going to figure out what we're going to do. I know Commissioner Wayne's been really involved out there working with it, and be a touchy subject for 10 people with the right of way.
I haven't seen any prints or plans. I don't have any visual aids to this.
We all want the
Trying
same
to-
thing.
where you're gonna fit it in,
I'd like
that's
to
the
learn more
problem.
about this.
Yeah, just to comment, I'm sorry, Kevin.
Thanks. I mean, I think really the issue, I've been on this panel for 18 years, but the issue you really have, and I think both commissioners did a great job of explaining it. I mean, first and foremost, I don't even know how to unravel the right-of-way, and as this commissioner point of view, if they've been using it for 20, 30, 40 years for parking, I'm not taking it away from them. This commissioner's not going eminent domain. So, you know, we're trying to build something that, I think it's like, you know, the kid trying to have a truck going over the underpass. I mean, if there's 12 feet clearance you need, and the truck's 14 feet, it's not going to work. I mean, it's simple math here as I look at this. Conceptually, I think everybody would like to have the proper road, to have us exit very quickly, and that's the first priority. Amenities, shared use paths are really nice to have, but I don't see how they're going to be practical in this situation at all. I really don't. I mean, they're not there now. I'm certainly not going to take away right-of-ways, and I don't even want to think about the battle if we had to go down that path. To what end? I mean, from practicality, it's just, you know, I think David summarized it best. You can't fit this in. And if I had to choose between right-of-way parking that people utilize now or shared use paths, I would give the people back. I mean, it's hard enough to cause any additional injury to these people that have sacrificed so much and lost so much. They're building their business back. Now I'm going to say, by the way, you don't have parking? How are you going to be able to make your bills?
I'd rather see a center double turn lane, to get out of traffic and allow traffic to bypass somebody who's turning left, just that causes a lot of congestion in Mount Lachey. One person turning left might cause a mile of backup of cars waiting to get through traffic. So I am not in favor of everything I just heard right now.
Maybe it's just easier. I mean, I don't know if you need direction. I don't know what you're looking for here, Don, but I certainly have no problem indicating that you got to come back with a different proposal. This one doesn't work. If you need me to make that as a motion, I gladly will.
Second.
I mean, it just makes zero sense. So we need another alternative, and this one that's in front of us, I can't vote on.
And I just add, Kevin, if you might, they have a couple of parking areas there that are off-road, and that's one option. Maybe you could find some more space, but just thinking about it, it doesn't come to mind whether it'd be another large area like they have for the park area there. That would be amenable to walking to.
Well, I think they came up in your Mount Lachey community event last month, correct?
Yeah, I mean, and it's, Joe, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, as it is, there's a parking issue. As it is, there's a lot of shared parking. There's designated areas. There's businesses that have agreements in writing that they could use, during different hours. I mean, parking was such a commodity. We just had an event out there in the middle of a parking lot. So I don't know what alternative you can come up with, and I don't have one, but if my choice is right here, I can't vote for them.
Any other comments from the board? Public comment?
Do we need a motion for that? I'm sorry.
That's all right. We do have a motion on the table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moving on, the election of the 2025 MPOAC representatives.
So, for the benefit of the new members, I did bring a little slideshow. Very little. So it's the MPOAC governing board is made up of, there's 27 MPOs in Florida. There's a board member from each of the 27 that sit on the statewide board. They meet quarterly, usually in Orlando at the Florida Hotel. And as you can see, that's the map with the greens on it, essentially all the ones with MPOs. Their organization was created by Florida statutes to augment the role of individual MPOs in the cooperative transportation planning process. They do a lot of things like training and stuff for new board members and talk about issues that are coming up with FHWA, FTA, and also FDOT. They also participate in the national, like the National AMPO, Association of MPOs, things like that as a stakeholder and deal with transportation issues across from the national standpoint. So Fred Burson is the current alternate, and the current member was termed out, so we can either someone can volunteer to be the current primary member, or we can, since he's not here, we can make Fred Burson the primary member and have an alternative, whatever the board would like.
Well, I'll volunteer to be the primary. Or if when Fred shows up, he wants to be, then I'll switch with him since he's been on it.
Okay.
I was going to nominate Fred.
All those in favor?
Wait, you were going to?
Nominate Fred as the primary.
Yeah, if he comes in and we talk, we can switch.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
She was going to nominate Fred to be primary.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay, Mike? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So what did we decide?
That Fred would be the primary.
And he wants it.
He will.
Sounds like Teresa's
Well,
gonna
again,
talk him
if he
into it.
doesn't, I'll take over, okay?
An alternate?
Yeah, are you okay with being the?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Guess we pass comments. Any public comment? Good, thank you. Moving on to other business. Public comments on items not on the agenda. Okay, we'll move on to the Lee Trans/TD report.
Good morning. Kelly Fernandez, Leetran. I have a few updates for you this morning on our ridership and projects. Fixed route ridership for FY24 concluded with an overall 20% increase over the prior year. Our paratransit ridership averages approximately...
I'm sorry, it's a little hard to hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Let me start again. Our fixed route ridership for FY24 concluded with an overall 20% increase over the prior year. Our paratransit ridership averages approximately 600 passengers daily, which includes transportation disadvantaged trips. Our mobility on demand service transported 1,288 riders for the week ending November 16th. Our seasonal service change began yesterday, November 21st. This included adjustments to the Route 20 to provide increased frequency. In addition, the fare-free Fort Myers Beach tram began running daily between approximately 8 a.m. and 11 p.m., and the downtown trolleys, also fare-free, began daily service between 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. Our 2025 Transit Development Plan continues to progress, and to date we have conducted 1 steering committee meeting and 2 focus group meetings. Passenger surveys will be conducted over a 2-week period beginning early December. The TDP will be delivered to FDOT for review by September 1st, 2025, aligning with the MPO's long-range plan. The ADA bus stop improvement project remains underway. The project includes design, engineering, and construction of 136 bus stops. This will occur in a phased approach over a 3-year period. The design firm has begun the survey and design for the first 50 stops, and construction of those stops is expected to begin by mid-2025. The bus stop signage project is also underway, with nearly half of the system-wide signage installed. We anticipate this project will be completed by spring of '25. And finally, our Lehigh Acres Park and Ride is on pace for substantial completion in January and final completion in April of '25. And that's what I have for you this morning, unless you have any questions.
Any questions from the board?
You know, I'm just interested in the mobility on demand. If you have any additional information about reliability, performance, just what you recommend there to improve it, and or is it going on the pathway that you expect it to go?
So mobility on demand is a growing service. So we began with Bonita Springs. We started out with 2 vehicles in that area. We've grown to 4 vehicles. We've also expanded into Lehigh Acres with two vehicles. We recently put in a service development application through the state, through the Florida Department of Transportation, to expand the service area and additionally add 2 additional vehicles to provide 4 vehicles of service daily. We anticipate through some of those conversations with the transit development plan, with the steering committee and those stakeholders, that additional requests may come out of those conversations and the growing need for expanding that service.
How are those requests originated? By the municipality themselves? For instance, the Cape wanted to participate. How would that occur?
Right. So I do know that the city of Cape Coral, had some representation on our recent stakeholder meeting, and that was one of the things that came out of that. So it does look like it'll be perhaps an emerging request.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I will share that with the American Sand Sculpting Championships returning to Fort Myers Beach yesterday, it was very timely to have the tram service starting again as well. When I headed to a meeting yesterday afternoon, they were full, so thank you very much.
Yeah, I did find out that we had approximately 285 people that rode the tram yesterday.
And that continues through the weekend, so thank you. FDOT report, Wayne?
Good morning, Wayne Gaither with Florida Department of Transportation. I will be brief. We have our public hearing for the tentative work program that will be starting the week of December 9th. We have our virtual public hearing, face-to-face meeting that will be occurring on December 11th, which is a Wednesday. During that time, we'll be soliciting and accepting comments on the tentative work program that comes through. For the virtual meeting, I will have 2 meeting sites within the district. We will have one at our headquarters in Bartow and another one at our Southwest area office. That will occur between 10 and noon. Additional information and advertisements will be sent out in the very near future with a link that will allow people to register for the virtual component of that meeting. The other thing I'd like to bring up is the department is soliciting for transportation alternative applications. That will start on December 2nd through March 31st. And during that time, we will be requesting information from our MPOs for transportation alternative projects. Those are projects that are generally non-motorized vehicles, sidewalks, things of that nature that would come through. And the applications are submitted for, I guess, a competitive review at that point with our central office staff. And that concludes our FDOT report.
Any questions for Wayne?
Did we mention the completion date for Colonial?
Completion date for Colonial?
It's been a popular question.
Oh, that was going to be for the diverging diamond that we have going on. So our official estimate is we're working towards having everything finished up for or substantially finished for the end of the calendar year. I can go verify that and get back with Don, and we can send out some additional information if need be.
Yes, please.
Not a problem.
Anything else? Thank you, Wayne. Don, any announcements?
The only thing is I put in at the end there, we're having our Safe Streets for All public meeting at the Hilton Garden Inn off of Alico Road from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. on December 9th.
Any information that needs to be shared from the group? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Adjourned at 9:59 a.m. Thank you very much.